what Hypersonix does, right? But I like to think of it as a pyramid. And at the bottom of that pyramid, the foundation is inventory. If you don't have inventory, then pricing doesn't really matter, right? You don't have product to sell. And so one of our top selling products is our Trailhead pants. They've been around for a long time. We have several different colors, and it's one of these products that has just a multitude of SKUs. It's a unisex product, but it comes in 2 different fits, 5 different sizes, etc. And the complexity is increased due to the fact that we have varying lead times even within that style. So our factory, for example, will keep X amount of units in each color on hand at the factory, and then there will be an additional lead time to create virgin fabric that's used to create those. So what Hypersonix has allowed us to do is say, what are the top selling SKUs within this particular style? How much fabric do we have at the factory? And we can go as granular as we need to down to the SKU level to say, okay, we have 700 units available in a navy, and we're going to allocate that into 2 different SKUs with a 60-day lead time on those. And then for the remaining order of the additional 2,000 units in those SKUs that we'd like to order, we're going to have a 90-day lead time, and we're able to forecast how that's going to affect our business. The other thing that's extremely helpful to get out of this spreadsheet analysis, old way of doing inventory.
Given how dynamic the market is, how fickle consumer demand might be, all those kinds of things.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's a great question. I think what we're beginning to see more and more is speed to reaction is going to be extremely critical in today's market. How fast are you able to move? Just given how fast your competition is moving, just given how fast things are changing in the market. So a couple of things we have done, not just with him, but in general with Shopify merchants, is that we integrate directly into Shopify. So we are reading signals near real time. We also work with several marketplaces, right? We have got several Shopify merchants who are selling on Amazon, and they want to win the buy box on Amazon. They're trying to optimize different pricing strategies between Amazon and Walmart and various other marketplaces, as well as their own Shopify store, because obviously the margins are different based on which channel they're selling on. So being able to do a multi-channel strategy in an automated fashion is truly what Agentic AI does, right? An Agentic AI system essentially is not just reading signals and making recommendations, but is also able to take action for you to react fast to changing demand, right? Either you're trying to win the buy box, or you're trying to maximize your sales or drive cash flow for a certain month. You can set those parameters in a system, and it automatically is able to act on those to achieve that business goal of yours. I think that's one of the big things we are beginning to see more and more, especially in the digital world, right? How quickly can you react to changing consumer demand?
AI in this context is not as much of a boogeyman, I feel, as it is in many other different things. But can you talk about what controls are put in place to ensure that when you talk about it being able to act in reaction to the data, to ensure that a business isn't compromising either its core identity or just foundational, be it pricing, infrastructure, or whatever?
Yeah, no, it's a great question again. So we today, for example, I'll give you 3 brands that we work with. One, a super luxury brand like LVMH, a grocery store, and a cannabis industry. I'll pick 3 customers of ours. So if you think about a luxury brand like LVMH, they're trying to monitor competition, everybody from Gucci to Prada, to figure out what products are they selling, at what price points are they selling, what new assortment are they having, how should I broadly plan my assortment and categories, and what should I be introducing. You can use the system to also do things like new product introduction. And what they're able to do in a system like ours is go in and set up those parameters. They say, hey, I'm not interested in changing price. I'm not in the business of changing price every day, but I'm in the business of generating great new products and understanding what my competition is doing and how should I position myself in the market. And those are things that you can set up as business rules within an AI system like ours. And business rules are typically guardrails that you set up so that the AI system behaves within those guardrails or optimizes within those guardrails. And then if you take a grocery store as an example, they change price every week, and they have hundreds of thousands of SKUs. They have stores. They have very store-specific competitors, right? They want to sell their avocados 10 cents cheaper than the store next door. So they are constantly monitoring competition, constantly making margin adjustments, and pushing out price changes. And when you take someone like a cannabis business, their whole world revolves around competition, right? who are my competitors, how are they pricing for a similar product, and how can I win that. So you can set all these different parameters as just ground rules within the system, where you essentially set up what we call business rules that defines what your brand strategy is or what your business strategy is, right? And could just be things like margin strategy or brand perception or assortment strategy. And once you set that up, the system is able to learn from that. And constantly as new signals come in, it understands the rules that you have set up in the system and optimizes within those constraints. And then pushes out and is able to then either make recommendations that you can approve or can take action for you. So think of it as a personal assistant at that point, where it's able to either take action for you so you're not wasting time. And we have clients where they automate that action for very small changes. If they say, hey, if it's less than $1 change, act on my behalf. If it's anything more than $3 change, I want to approve it, I want to have control. And you can set those controls up in the system, so the system then knows what to do.
Jim, can you talk a little bit about where the company is right now and how eager the company at what pace you hope to continue scaling? Because that's one of those, you talk about the inventory, all those sort of challenges in terms of starting with one thing that it could end up to be 50. How measured and how aggressive do you hope to be with the brand?
Measured. To answer that question, it's very easy in our business to get ahead of yourself in terms of inventory, in terms of SKU count, in terms of the amount of capital that you have tied up in a warehouse somewhere, and the need to move that very quickly. And I think no matter how ahead of the curve you try and get on that front, there's always going to be room for improvement. But that's where Hypersonix has really come in, because even with slow-moving inventory, you can look across a wide variety of sellers that sell comparable products just to better understand what it is that they're doing, what pricing is going to entice the consumer to purchase, while also not compressing margins so much that you end up missing the mark and losing out on opportunities for additional capital and sales that really help grow your business. I think anytime in any business when you can take decision making from this reactive sort of gut feeling process to proactive measured approach, it's really positive, and that's something that the platform has allowed us to do. Yeah, now that we're on the way as far as inventory is concerned, scale is definitely top of mind with better strategies.
Can you talk a little bit about, and I'll bring in Prem about this as well, but can you talk a little bit about to what extent things like tariffs are impacting your ability, your profitability, your scalability, all those, your inventory, all those kinds of things?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People book. And one of the things that they talk about in that book is the circle of concern and the circle of influence. And right now in our world, the circle of concern seems to be doubling every single day. And people are very afraid of tariffs, of supply chain issues, of what is going to happen. And while those are understandable concerns, the approach that I like to take is to try and remain in the circle of influence, right? Things like tariffs and freight costs and competitor promotions and consumer price sensitivity, those are all in the concern bucket. And those are things that we as a brand do not have control over. But the things that we do have control over are our own promotions, our own discounts, our own inventory management, our own pricing, and our own supply chain. And that's where I'm trying to spend my time in focusing on those things that I had just mentioned. And it's going to be really interesting to see how this all plays out.
Sure. Prem, can you talk about how your system can adapt and react to that, which is obviously a different consideration than necessarily habits?
No. So one of the things we are beginning to see more and more, especially over the last month and a half, is many merchants are trying to figure out what are their competitors doing about changing costs. So monitoring your competition and just even getting a pulse of how is everyone reacting. Are people changing prices? Because that's an immediate way to pass margin compression, right? You can pass it to the consumer. So obviously getting a market, benchmarking yourself against the market is clear a step that we're seeing a lot of them taking. Some of the guys who have already, we in fact have an agentic workflow system where you can actually go into the system and set up specific tariff rules by product categories, right? Because you could have different products being sourced from different regions, and you could have different tariffs for each product that you're sourcing from. And you want to be, and let's say you have thousands of SKUs, then you want to be able to dynamically maintain that margin goals that you have at a category level and not have to worry about, oh, I'm sourcing this from Vietnam versus China versus Italy versus Spain. So you're trying to figure out, okay, how do I not have to worry about this every month, and how does the system automatically ensure that it's taking into account the most recent or the latest tariff into account, and maintaining my margin goals and optimizing for, and also looking at demand patterns for those items, right? Because as you have margin goals, you can, if you pass that to the consumer, it might affect what your future demand is going to be, because consumers might choose not to just buy that product. So being able to mix what they are doing with demand forecasting and planning, along with understanding tariffs at a category item level and maintaining margin goals all together and optimizing towards that, has become front and center for a lot of these guys who are trying to get ahead of the tariff game, especially when you're sourcing a lot of items from China and Asia. Yeah.
Just to, in terms of your process, is it always fully bespoke in terms of the way you create this for each client, or is there a sort of templatized version?
Shopify Merchant is fairly templatized. You can get up and running in 2 to 3 weeks. We have direct connectors into Shopify, Amazon, all the standard systems, including Salesforce, Commerce Cloud, and NetSuite, and everything else. So we pull in typically historical data to understand seasonality, understand time, how are people buying patterns based on time of the day of the year, and things like that. Competitor data, we already today mine over 50 million websites automatically, so we already scrape and bring all the data in. That's just part of our AI learning. So the system learns by industry what demand patterns are. So that information is mostly there, and if not, we'll bring in specific competitor data for each client. And the rest, you just set up business rules and get started, pretty much. The system is then able to start making recommendations, and then you can set up rules where you want it to be automated.
Gotcha. Listen, let's have another round of applause for JM and for Prem. Thank you guys so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a great day.